Good afternoon, HTGR Realty. Thank you for your attendance. We're going to be going over the residential lease agreement and also the TRBC, which is the tenant broker representation agreement. If you haven't written a lease, this will be more of a review, but if you need more in-depth after the training and you're going into a lease situation, residential, come see me. I'll be happy to help anybody individually. Okay, so we're with the 10. I don't know, hang on, I got to move the boxes around. Okay. Okay, so this is the TRBC. Okay, there we go. Tenant representation and broker compensation agreement. We will require this on your packages. So we'll be asking for it. So you put the tenant's name, the date prepared would be today, if that was the case, the tenant's name, the broker name. It's either HTGR Realty or you can use our corporate name, HTGR Partners Inc., whichever is easier for you to remember. Now remember, HTGR Realty is strictly for residential, and we're doing a residential training today. The corporate name, the DBA for commercial, just as a reminder, is Coldwell Banker Commercial George Realty. Okay, so the representation period, I started showing them last week in this example, and I'm going to expire this on 12/12, whoops, yeah, 25. So you see here, it says or earlier upon tenant taking possession of a unit. So this ends once they take possession, okay? The property type, it already is defaulting to a single family, but I also checked condo and apartment and I put townhouse style. The location, the cities, this form doesn't let you go by county, so you do need to do cities. I'm going to be showing the client in Alhambra, Pasadena, San Dimas. The term preferences, I would, it's better to do a 1-year lease at minimum because month to month you wouldn't make enough money to even be showing the property really. So make sure that you're checking for a 1-year lease term, but most the units out there are that way. Okay, so real estate commission, they're telling you here again, is not fixed by law. It's all negotiable. The amount of compensation, I'm going to show you something on this one. You notice here on A, I didn't check this and put anything, right? Let's say 3. So 3% of the total rental payment, or you can check here, tenant shall not owe any compensation. Well, if you're working with a property owner, a lot of times they are willing to pay the agent procuring the tenant for the commission. So you can do it either way you want. You can uncheck this, leave it at the 3%, or that the tenant's not going to owe because you're going to get it from the other side. It's okay to put the 3% there or whatever you deem necessary, 5%, whatever you're going to negotiate with the tenant, okay? So, and it says if the broker receives compensation from the housing provider, then you have to deduct it from whatever the tenant would have owed you as far as commission, okay? So I just wanted to go over the grid section of that. This is only a 2-page agreement because we will be requiring it. Now we're going to get into the lease. Okay, I filled it out because I'm noticing when I'm looking at some leases, there's little checkbox that we miss because there's a lot, and so I filled it out as if I were doing a lease. So I prepared the lease today. I have my tenant name, I have my property owner name, I have the address. What B is really important, 1B. So who's going to be able to use this as their personal residence? Of course, the 2 tenants, But these two tenants have two minor children. I don't need the children's names. I'm just going to indicate that they have two minor children's, okay? Two minor children. So I always do that. I don't want to be very specific on the names. It's sufficient just to put minor children, okay? And minor children, whatever, okay? So here under B, guests are not permitted to stay more than 14 days without a housing provider's written consent. Some housing providers don't want 14 days and they will amend it down to 10, but we will leave that to the housing provider. But you do need to point that out, that they don't have to have your permission unless you amend these days down if somebody stays 14 days as a guest, okay? And maybe the housing provider cares because maybe they're supplying water. I don't know. Maybe they think, oh, it's going to cost me, you know, if somebody's staying there for 14 days. So you do need to point this out to them and ask them how many days they prefer. I know where my daughter rents an apartment near the college, they only allow 7 days for a guest to stay there. Okay. So the following personal property maintained pursuant to paragraph 11, make sure that you put in if there's a stove and refrigerator that's included. Go ahead and check that in. As you know, beginning 1/1/2026, for new leases or amended leases, that it is required that the landlord will now, or excuse me, housing provider, we need to get used to the verbiage, will be providing the refrigerator. So that would mean to me that they also need to maintain that refrigerator, okay? So the term begins on 1/1/2026, and this is a lease, so it's going to expire 12/31/2026. I always give them time in the evening in case they need a moving truck, so I put 7 or 8 p.m., but you can discuss that with the property owner. The tenant agrees to pay the $2,500 per month for the term of the agreement, and rent is payable in advance on the first day of each calendar month and is delinquent on the next day. So people don't realize it does become delinquent on the next day. So if you started in a different, like on the 15th, I would still try to prorate it and make it always due on the 1st because it gets confusing for people. Okay. So the payment, rent shall be paid by personal check or cashier's check. I never put money order because in recent past, there has been some fake money orders that somebody told me about that happened. So I don't check money order. I only check a personal check or a cashier's check. But again, that is up to the property owner. How do they want to receive funds? Or you see that they have the ability to say they want it wired and where it's going to be wired to. Okay. So rent shall be delivered to, here is the owner's name, phone number, and their address. I didn't stipulate any hours because that's checked here if they can deliver it to an office. So on this particular case, I did not check that because you would need to put the hours and what days they could deliver to that office if you were checking that. Now you'll note on D3, I've checked cashier's check because if any payment is returned for non-sufficient funds or the tenant stops payment, the housing provider may require in writing that the tenant pay rent in cash for 3 months and in the future rent to be paid by cashier's check. So that is up to the provider, but I usually just check the cashier's check box there just because I know what happened with these money orders here. Okay. Security deposit, as we all know, the maximum amount of security deposit paid cannot exceed 1 month. So I put the $2,500 here. That's regardless of if you say, oh, there's a key deposit, oh, there's a this and a that. No matter how you slice that $2,500 pie, it can only total $2,500. So if you wanted $200 for the remote, then that would go down by $200, you know. So, and I'll show you how it's going to stay at 25, but let me show you how it's laid out. The security deposit, of course, is transferred and held by the owner of the premises. We do not have a broker's account trust account here. So down here, move-in costs right here. Move-in funds shall be paid by, I always require a cashier's check. Now, maybe the homeowner is really comfortable with wire payments. That's up to them. You'll need to talk to them about it. But for us, we always check cashier's check. So the rent is the $2,500. The due date, it's going to be before the 1st, and it's going to be payable to Sam Chase. And here's the security deposit. So what I mean is this, even if you put other and you put $200 remote deposit, then you would have to take this down by 200. Whatever you do in the security deposit, it can only total the first month's rent. Okay. Now, another caution is when you are executing the lease, make sure that you do receive, the funds, or that the landlord or property owner receive that wire. You don't want to hand over any keys or anything until that is in. In addition to that, if they require insurance, you need the insurance cert prior to handing keys over. Okay. Late charge is up to the owner. In this case, I put $125, which if you calculate it, you'll realize that's 5%. Sometimes I think it's nice to express it in the term because they go, ouch, I don't want to pay them an additional $125. So that's why I put it in dollar amount rather than percent. And you need to talk to the owner about the late charge. Okay. So we're going to go over these check boxes. Parking is permitted as follows. 1 parking space number 62 in this sample, or it could be that there is first come, first serve parking lot. Some apartment buildings have that. But if it's a condo complex or something like that, then there's going to be an assigned spot. If it's a single family, you could put parking is permitted as follows in the garage located on the premises on the property. Okay. So the right to park is included unless it's not. If the landlord was in a really crowded area, maybe they do charge additional for parking, but most of the places around here, they're not going to do that. Or you have B, parking is not permitted. Downtown LA does have buildings like that where there's no parking. Okay. So if that's the case, you need to make sure you're checking the right box. So storage, I always check B, except for tenants' personal property contained entirely within the premises. Storage is not permitted because you don't want people erecting things to store in. Sometimes over a parking spot, there may be a little storage closet. But I always check that they need to contain it within their own premises because I don't want them erecting anything to store something if that's not the housing provider's intent. Utilities, it's important to put this in. I always put in Wi-Fi, internet, telephone as desired. Now, people could argue that's not really utility, but I want them to know that the landlord is not providing those, that if they desire to have that, then they need to get it. Okay. Sometimes the water's covered, sometimes it's not. There may not be an exception, but in this case, I put water, that the housing provider is paying for the water. If there is a sub-meter, meaning if they're not metered individually, then you need to provide the sub-meter car form, WSM, okay? Come down here. So condition of the premise on number 10, the tenant has examined the premises and if any furnishings are there, etc. So we're going to check all that apply. So the tenant acknowledge of the condition of the items contained in the attached statement of condition. So that's the move-in form. I like these done at least 3 or 4 days ahead of the lease because you want to knock this out. Sometimes in the past, I used to just say, oh, take the 3 days and turn it in later. And then sometimes it's not easy to get it back. So now I recommend that you always go ahead of the lease commencement date, a few days ahead. Let them walk the unit, note anything on the move-in form, and they can also, the the property owner needs to have pictures of that unit prior to leasing it. That came into effect, I think, this year. So make sure you're providing excellent service and reminding the property owner, do you have your pictures? Do you have them prior to the lease? Because they need those documentation pictures in case there was any claim for security deposit. It is a requirement. Now I don't know if it's civil code or by law, but it is a civil code. They have to take those pictures. So you provide that service and remind your property owner. Maintenance and use of reporting. The tenant, needs to use the premises as is intended and safeguard it. Now you have some check boxes down here. So I checked that the housing, okay, the tenant or the HOA, I'm sorry, I should have checked. The HOA is going to water the gardening and land, trees and all that. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry, my clicks are off. The tenant is going to maintain the little plants in the planters. And the only reason I put this as a sample is because we did have a balcony once. It's private locked. And they're like, hey, the gardener's not coming in there. Well, they can't get in there because those were all privately little locked balconies. So if there's something like that, make sure you're covering it and letting the tenant know that they're going to need to, maintain the planter box or whatever, or they make a deal with the landlord to maybe have it cut back maybe every couple times a year if required. But the one we had was tiny. So periodic pest control, I usually don't deal with this. I leave it blank because a lot of times the property owner doesn't have somebody coming all the time and doing periodic pest control. There's certain people that have annual contracts with a termite company or a pest control company, but most of them don't. So unless they tell you they do, you leave G blank, okay? So if there is an animal, meaning if they don't allow pets, or they have a service animal or a service dog, emotional support animal, excuse me, you do need to attach the except as agreed to in the animal terms and condition addendum. So if there's a pet on premises, a service animal or emotional support animal, please make sure you're populating this form, okay? And it's a checkbox. Smoking, this is a non-smoking unit. The lease stipulates it that way. And you can only change it to smoking if this box was checked right here. But I've never seen a property owner check that box. So they are non-smoking, okay? And I will go further to say that Pasadena, the city of Pasadena has some of their own little disclosures. And I'm not even sure that you can smoke outside of your units in Pasadena. I'll have to check that, but Pasadena has its own disclosures for rentals, couple little disclosures because they're very strict on the smoking policies there in their city. Rules and regulation. I would check that the tenant has been provided with a copy of the rules and regulations. In the HOA docs, they usually have some rules and regulations, and they also have, and they may have something for the tenant. But if not, it's easy to type up what's in the HOA docs as rules, and you can provide that to the tenant. If checked, it's a condominium planned unit development, which this is. The name of the HOA is Main Street HOA. So here I put that the tenant has been provided with and acknowledges receipt of a copy of the HOA rules, okay? So on the keys and locks, tenant acknowledges receipt or tenant will receive prior to the commencement date. I'm not going to check it. I check that they're going to receive those keys and such on the commencement date of the lease. I'm not going to give them out early. So they're going to get one key to the premise, one to the mailbox, one remote control. This is really important. 18B, a lot of times people don't notice it, but please, please don't miss 18B and check whatever box is applicable. Tenant acknowledges that the locks to the premise they have or have not been changed. It's a really important box to check. We need to notify the tenant if those locks have been changed or not. Okay, so B is really important. It's really easy to miss because it's real small, but make sure you're covering yourself on that. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to go down what we're going to be filling in. Okay, so here's the insurance. So I know that my daughter's college apartment, they make us maintain $100,000 liability insurance annually, which we do. I think I pay $170 a year for that. So you talk to the housing provider and ask them if they want the tenant to obtain their own liability insurance. Most savvy landlords are going to have you provide it. And they need to provide a copy of the insurance policy before, right here, the commencement date of the agreement and every renewal, it says right here, but on this case, we're on a year. They need to provide that, okay? So that's really important. And they're also going to name the housing provider as additional insured on that policy. And that doesn't cost anything more to do, okay? Notice the notices of service, like if you need to notify the housing provider something, please have that filled out with their name and their address. Same thing of the tenant. I put the tenant's name and the address where they live. This is important too on number 36. It defaults if any action to proceed arises out of this agreement, the prevailing party between the tenant and the housing provider shall be entitled to reasonable attorney fees, not to exceed 1,000. So just so you know about that paragraph, you can either leave it or amend it to 2,500. Most of the time I see people just leave it at 1,000, but I just put a figure in there so you realize, you know, there's not a lot of hours you can get for $1,000 from attorney. So that's something to consider, okay? Mold and dampness automatically checks in. It is a disclosure that's required. So this box is automatically checked. However, I always check the residential environmental hazard booklet. I check it in. It populates. It's just a booklet for them to keep in their, you know, kitchen drawer or whatever. But I always add that to this agreement because it covers some of the civil code requirements for disclosure. So I always put it in myself. I want it in. Okay. So back here, make sure your agency confirmation is correct. Of course, you're going to have a agency disclosure. One would have been signed by your housing provider. Another one would have been signed by your tenant. Make sure this is all filled in properly and checked properly that you're representing both tenant and housing provider. So this is important. Termination of agency relationship. When is your agency going to stop? Because you know we're not property managers. We cannot do property management functions. It's not covered in our brokerage by our E&O, and it stipulates in everybody's independent contractors agreement that we can't do that. So anyway, when is your agency relationship going to terminate? I usually check upon tenant occupancy and completion of the move-in form. Those are the two I usually check. So once they take occupancy, you can check all that apply. Hopefully you already have the move-in form prior to occupancy. That's what I recommend. So if that's the case, just check tenant occupancy. But you take a look and decide for yourself. But this is the one I always check because I'm not going to be delivering keys early. Okay, I don't ever deliver keys early. Owner agreement to pay tenant's broker. I put 5%. It could be 3% and 3% on the listing side, but at any rate, in this example, I put 5%. I filled out C because I wanted to show you all how to do it. So the payment of compensation out of tenants' move-in funds. So you saw up above, we're collecting $5,000 because we're getting $2,500 for the rent, $25 for the security deposit. So here we're going to have payments made directly to the tenant's broker and the housing provider's broker. So 5% would be 1,500. So maybe it's 750, 750. It depends. This is dual, so I just put it on one. But if it's not dual, you're going to put 750, 750. Usually you can also just have all the money paid to our brokerage, and then we will cut the check to the other broker, or you can have it go directly to the other broker. So if that's the case, 750, 750, or whatever the appropriate breakout is.
So on that percentage, the 42B, that's the percentage that the house provider will pay to both tenants, both agents?
Yeah. Yeah, this is just an example.
For both agents.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes this could be 6%, 7%. It just depends on what the agreements are. But if it's two agents, make sure you're breaking it down into two agents, okay? So these auto check a lot of these. The only thing I think I checked was the bed bug disclosure, because why not? It's required. I'm going to show you the lists of the terms of the forms required. And we're coming to the bottom, so everybody just signs it. If it was an entity, of course, you're going to check the box, put the name of the entity, and put who the authorized signers are, and then have them sign here. But in this case, these are individuals. This, if you do this on the agreement, then you don't have to do another, form, the representation capacity, okay? And then the housing provider signs here. Make sure that all of this is filled in properly. If you are dueling, please sign both places and have both places filled out, so there's no question on that, okay? So before I move on, I wanted to know if there's any questions.
I have a question. Because in this particular case, 3% on a 1 year lease.
You should go higher, go 5.
10.
Yeah, 5, right? So yours is going to be set by your listing agreement, right? So let's say you're the listing agent for this rental unit. What are you going to put for your commission?
10%.
Okay, so Daniel's going to put 10%. Wonderful. Okay.
Fair,
Yeah, and then you're going to have your TRBC filled out with the 10%. Excuse me, the TRBC later comes in play, right? And then whatever commission you put on that is in addition to the 10% that you have on your listing agreement. So I just did a quick example. You negotiate. I know one of the other agents told me today that they get at least 5% if they're representing one side as just the tenant, and this is on higher priced units. So make sure you're negotiating fairly for yourself, because when I show you the list, there is a lot of disclosures required. And even if you only represent the tenant and not the housing provider, you still need to make sure you get all those disclosures regardless. So yes, Daniel, good point. It's a lot of work. So since these were checked into the agreement, the bed bug disclosure, the tenant flood hazard disclosure. So you see here, this property is not located in a special flood hazard area or area of potential flooding. And you say, well, how do I know? So you can get a free renter's flood report from John Wax at Snap NHD, and you can take a look at the report, and it's free, okay? So if one didn't apply, it would be checked here, okay? But he'll provide those for free. So if you need a flood report for a rental, call John Wax at Snap NHD. And the rent cap just clause addendum does apply and populate. So I'm not going to go over disclosures today, but I wanted to get the lease go over, because I've noticed some of those boxes are not checked. And I can do all of the disclosures in another training, but I want to show you something else. I'll schedule to do all of the disclosures. I'll either record it and send it out, or I'll do it live. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let me get back in and I'm going to show you the checklist. So if you follow the checklist, Anna's been going over them and then I review everything too with her. You're in pretty good shape because the way I'm reviewing it is she provides a list. I look against the car attorney's list of required documents or what the suggested documents as well. So I want to show you the list that you should always print and keep on file or on your desktop when you're working a transaction. Checklists. So these are right on our website. If you don't have our website, we have e-blasted it out, but if you need it, just let me know. So residential lease listing, this is for residential only. When you're, excuse me, preparing a listing, you need to have all of these documents with it. If, like I always say, get the listing first. If it's too much in that one day, go back a day later or two and get the rest of the disclosures done, but make sure that you're getting them. And you see here, we have a property management advisory that is on our website. And that tells the housing provider that we're not their property manager, you know, that we don't do property management. So that's required to be signed by both the housing provider and the tenant. So the tenant understands that they don't call us for a broken toilet. They need to call the housing provider or their designated property manager. Okay. That's very important. And then here's the other side. Once you get the tenant, this is all the disclosures that are going to be required. And this is a lot of it self-populates, but if not, you just add it in. And what's nice is this list that Anna put together, you have the form name here, the CAR4 name. You can look it up by FHDA and just populate everything into your filing cabinet in the car. So one other thing I want to mention is when you are doing leases, because leases can get can be tricky, right? With things people ask you. So what I always advise is I have applications laying on the counter somewhere in the unit, in the kitchen or whatever, and just let them take an application, because you don't want to answer questions like, oh, you know, do you think I can, you know, what if I can't walk the stairs? Well, that's up to you. There's applications, you know, go ahead and fill out an application. Let them make their own decisions. We never say anything other than, here's your application. Let the housing provider, you're collecting all of the data for them. What I normally collect with an application is I'm going to collect the application, government issued ID, a copy, make sure it's signed so that they can run a credit report. And if you're, I think there's you can do Rent Spree online, or if you're doing, somebody else is running your credit report, make sure that you collect the fee for that. Okay. So you check here and put whatever the fee is, $40, $30, whatever. Okay. But make sure. So when I'm collecting a package, I have to have a fully completed application. I have to have a government issued ID, a current one. I need the application fee, or Rent Spree. I think they go on and do it themselves and pay the fee directly to Rent Spree if you're using that. And I usually require either 3 months of their latest pay stubs, or if they're self-employed, 2 years of tax returns. And if they don't want to provide that to me, I don't mind if they say, hey, I'll provide that directly to the housing provider, and you give them an email, because there are some people that don't want you looking at all of their stuff, right? But do discuss with the housing provider what kind of package they would like to see. Okay. So if somebody calls you and says, is the property Section 8? All properties, we can't say no. Just say, yeah, you can submit your application. Okay, because we can't say no on Section 8. You just say submit your application. So if they ask you about pets, and then it's not a pet and it's actually a service animal, that's a whole different category, right? So you can't say no pets, but then think you're including service animals or emotional support, because there's laws that protect that. Okay, so just be aware, because you'll get some funny questions, but most people, they just want to rent a unit. So just be careful how you speak is the advice, and just let everybody take an application, because after all, we're there to facilitate collecting the data that the housing provider needs to make a good decision, along with the credit report. Okay. So are there any questions?
And yes, one more question. Michelle, this still used to be, we asked for 1 year. Why not to ask for 2 to 5 years, please?
You can get a 2-year lease, whatever. Just make sure that it's stipulated in your listing agreement hang on, let me go back, because you want to make sure that you've said in the listing agreement those terms exactly, because there's a box you check. It could either be 1 year, or you check other and you put rental term 3 to 5 years, and then you're covered for commission. So make sure that if you are going for a longer lease, which I think a lot of housing providers would enjoy, make sure that you put that on the listing agreement to cover yourself. There's another thing. If you don't, this lease says that if they provide you with insurance for water-filled furniture, such as waterbed, I think it's out of style, I don't know. But for instance, I have clients that have beautiful hardwood floor. They're never going to allow water-filled furniture. So if that's the case, in the other terms, as I've handwritten in the ones you guys have, I put no water-filled furniture shall be permitted on the premises. So if they have beautiful hardwood floors or something like that, you want to make sure you're covering them. And you don't want to allow the water-filled furniture in, okay? Even with an insurance policy.
Michelle, when you're collecting all that stuff for the lease, the stubs and the application, for the credit report, how do we get that? With a personal check or what?
The credit report?
Yeah, you know, they pay like 20, maybe 30, $40 for, them to do the credit report on them.
Yeah, I normally get a check.
Okay.
Excuse me, cash. And then whoever is doing the credit, then I get the credit report from them. But I've already got the fee in that application. I pre-put the fee in so they know it's not like I'm just collecting to collect. They could also write a check directly to who's ever running the credit. But a lot of times with $40, they'll hand you cash. You can give them a receipt. You can just write up a receipt, $40 for credit report on property, and put the address and then just initial it.
Okay.
But a lot of times they're going to try to give you cash. I wanted to go back to number 30, paragraph 30, because I didn't really address it. But you see here, I put tenant shall not use on the premises. I checked portable. Washing machine, this should say portable dishwasher. I don't know what happened, but portable dishwasher or portable washing machine, because those things spit water all over. I know, because my daughter used one and we promptly got rid of it. It's a mess, okay? So if they have insurance for a water bed, is saying that they can have it with an insurance policy, I always put in no in the other terms, because people with hardwood floors really don't want water furniture on their hardwood floor. So in the other terms here, I would say no water-filled furniture shall be permitted on the premises, including water beds. But you can talk to your housing provider. Maybe they don't care. That's just my suggestion. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question, Michelle. Regarding section A, if the owner want to take, so what document, that I need from, what proof from the section 8 tenants?
What proof?
Section 8. Yeah, like, you say like
They have a
2 months.
voucher. They get a voucher from this section 8,
Uh-huh.
and they need to provide you the voucher if the housing provider does select that particular tenant. Because
Do
it's
we
a
need-
voucher of what
Mhm.
the government will pay, and then what they're gonna pay monthly.
Okay, what about bank statement, any of those? Income, because they work, they have low
Yeah,
income. Any proof of that?
yeah, I asked for maybe 1 or 2 months, but I think you should talk to the housing provider and see what they're expecting in the package. But you do want to have some kind of proof of funds. Now, if somebody is strictly on, let's say, excuse me, I'm sorry, their only income is maybe they're on Social Security. We cannot discriminate against that type of income, right? So that can't be a reason not to accept this particular tenant. So there's a lot of rules and regulations, and I think the best avenue is to let everybody apply and then let the housing provider look through completed packages. Now, the one thing that I will caution you is I wouldn't require them to run credit. Let's say you collected 5 applications. Maybe wait and let the housing provider look at the applications and then select the top or whatever their decision is that they want to run credit on. Okay. So the fee, if you can collect it later, or you can collect it at time of application and then just hold on to it and then return it if they don't need a credit report.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't like to run people's credit if it's not required. So then I'll either mail their check back, or I'll meet up with them to give them their money. Okay?
So when the application is been submitted, is it just a credit report fee is to be?
You need to collect the credit report fee.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. But I know there's a few agents here. When you go into your car.org, there's a rent-free button that you can click. They love that because the tenant goes ahead to rent-free and orders the report that they stipulate, and they pay directly to rent-free, and the report comes back to the agent with a copy to the tenant. I haven't personally used it because we have, our people that run our credit reports, but I know there's a few agents here that love rent-free because it's so simple, and then you're not involved in collecting money or anything like that. Yeah, and that's available service. Car has it. Yeah.
So the prospective rental would do that.
Would do that
after they submit
themselves
the-
after everything's reviewed. Has anybody online ever used rent-free? No? Okay. So what I'm going to do is, because there's been a lot of changes with the RPA, rather than having a really long training, next week I will begin recording it, and then I'll have the link. If you guys need it, you let me know and I'll send it to you, but I'm going to go page by page over the RPA current, and then I'm going to start going over it and how I would structure an offer. If I were doing it, I will record it. It will be available to send out to anybody that wants it. I'm going to start making videos like that, and so that it helps you. And then, of course, if you need help on anything, please reach out. I'm always here. If you have a issue on the weekend, text me, call me. I may not hear it right away, but I will get back to you. If you have any issues or emergencies, let me know and I'm here to help you. Peter's here most Saturdays as well. So we want to make sure that you're comfortable and you're getting the support you need if you feel like you're having an issue. But I will send out the recording of the RPA so that we can all learn together. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So if you present someone who want to rent rent a house, and you what is your duty? So you help him if you help him find a property he's interested in, and then you help him submit the application to the listing agent.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So basically the application basically is just you collect his credit information, you collected his bank statement. Those are
Yeah.
very sensitive information.
So if you're not the listing agent and you're representing the tenant, I would always, well, you're going to make an appointment anyway with the listing agent to see the property. If they like the property, make
Mhm.
sure you're corresponding with the listing agent and ask them what they expect to see in the application package. And, ask them what they need. Because sometimes they'll only need the application, a government issued ID copy, and maybe, a pay stub. So ask them, don't volunteer. Just say what kind of documents do you need in the application? And sometimes even in the private remarks on the MLS, you'll see they've written in there what they're looking for. So make sure you're communicating and finding out what they need.
So basically the for example the listing agent post the house for renting on the website, and the tenant can look into those website.
Yes.
I feel so this process is very simple. Is very simple than buying a property. Basically, the tenant can do it by himself, I think. Yeah.
Right.
What
But
is yeah.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, simple in the fact that it's not as large of a decision or things like that because they're renting. But the thing is, there are a lot of disclosures required when you're working on rentals. So like that's why Daniel said he wants more commission because you are responsible for a lot of disclosures, those checklists that I flashed up to you, you're going to have one too. I mean, probably 20 different disclosures. So it's simple when you've done it a lot. But even if the other side doesn't supply you the disclosures, you still need to prepare it so that we can at least get the tenant to sign it, So it is simple because it's not as big of a decision and they will be hunting online a lot, the tenants. I think the only more complex thing for agents is to make sure that you understand the disclosures. And I think I'll make a video on the rental disclosures so that everybody can just look at those and I'll flash those up and I'll explain them.
So
Yeah.
basically, the procedure is similar as a present buyer, and so this time,
Yeah.
and then you go to all the portal, find the properties, and then you schedule tour the properties.
Yes. And yes, that's correct. So, and I know that I see some agents that in here, like Daniel has done a lot of leasing. It is a lot of footwork, isn't it, Daniel? Working with a tenant is a lot of footwork and it's a lot of driving around and, submitting and all of that. So, yeah, but it's not as big of a decision as if they're purchasing, but it's a serious process because we have to make sure that we have the right disclosures, but that's why we make lists for you. And that's why Peter and I are here. Anna can help you with, you know, the lists and stuff, but we will help you all the way through if you need it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Any other question?
Michelle, so at the leasing, you are presenting to the owner. So you whoever just give them application, right? And the ID. And then when you see whoever is like a qualified person, then you give out the, I mean, if the agent will give out the, the agreement, right?
Yeah, okay, so the preparation of the lease agreement is prepared by the listing agent. Yes. And so that does take some of the a little bit off of the tenant's agent, but not a lot because you still got to know what check boxes you're looking for, what needs to be done in that agreement. So, but it should, in theory, be prepared by the listing agent. Yes.
And I also see on the MLS or the leasing agent, like, they put down on the remark that they have to provide the ID, right? Driver
Yes.
license.
Yeah, a lot of them do, but some don't.
And then,
Make sure that you're asking for the same documents from each and every prospective tenant. Make a list. I usually shoot out a list because it's the same documents for everybody, so nobody could say, oh, you didn't ask them, but you asked me, or vice versa. So I just have a list. I shoot it out and I say, here's the application, and attached is a list of the documents that the housing provider is seeking. And then I have the same list for everybody. And I also attach that list when I lay applications on the kitchen counter in the properties. So if you guys want a list, I'll be happy to e-blast it.
and I also saw someone said on the remark, to qualify have to be 1/3 of your income. Is that okay? I see some do that on the.
No,
Huh?
okay, for me, I don't recommend it. I really don't. I just think, no, don't put stuff like that. Yeah. I don't recommend it because we can't, like, I probably overthink things, but I know, like, if somebody's on a disability payment or social security payment, I don't want to be saying that on the MLS and look like I'm veering away from those types of applicants. So that's just my opinion. I'm a very cautious individual. So for me, I'm not going to write that on the MLS. No, I really wouldn't.
So with the housing that we talked earlier, just like application and then the vouchers and then the bank statement, anything else like no income tax or nothing, return to US.
Okay, if they're self-employed, most like commercial for sure. Commercial landlords are going to ask for 2 years of tax returns. Maybe residential will only ask for 1 year of tax return, but the housing provider wants to have a way to verify what they're making. So especially for self-employed, they're going to want a tax return if they have check stubs, then, as a job, then they're not self-employed, and perhaps they can call the company and verify their employment. Yeah. Because they're going to want to see where the income's coming from, whether it be a voucher, social security payment, disability payment, wherever it's coming from, they need to have some type of verification. Any other questions? Okay.
I mean, regarding the income, you can verify 1 month, right? Or 1 the verification of the for the pay stuff.
No, I don't verify just 1 month. I've done 2 to 3 months,
Okay.
but that's up to the landlord. So maybe a couple of months, but you can call the housing provider can call and verify employment. Sometimes they'll have you email it. Sometimes there's a form they'll want you to fill out, but most companies will verify employment. Yeah. But the housing provider can do that. Any other questions? So I hope you all come the 19th to the holiday celebration. Some of you I've talked to about it, not all of you. So we're really looking forward to it. And remember, you're never alone here at High 10 Partners. You have backup, you have support, you have a very strong team behind you, and we're happy to walk behind you, beside you, in front of you, whatever you need to get done, whatever you need in your transactions. We're here to support you all the way. Okay. So thank you all. It's always my great honor and pleasure to spend some time with you. Have a
Thank
great
you, Michelle.
weekend.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Michelle.
Thank
thank
you.
you all.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.